Welcome everybody to our session on the role of international financial centers in attracting international capital in cooperation with the Astana International Financial Center and the World Alliance of International Financial Centers. My name is Jochen Biedermann and I will guide you through our session. Let me start diving into these very crucial topics for our economies by introducing Jennifer Reynolds. Jennifer is not only the chair of the World Alliance of International Financial Centers, but also the president and CEO of Toronto Finance International. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jochen. Well, welcome to everyone today. Thank you for joining. As Jochen mentioned, I'm the chair of the World Association of International Financial Centers, and this organization is very unique in that it brings together financial centers from around the world to focus on issues which we're all facing, on the opportunities and the challenges that we face as financial centers and countries, and to focus on sharing best practices and increasing collaboration between our financial centers and financial markets. And so the discussion today obviously is very topical. How do we attract capital as financial centers? What is our role? Clearly, it is absolutely critical. I know that I work in Toronto with many of my different counterparts domestically to attract capital to our markets. It is no doubt, just it is a part of many other countries' economic strategies. Ours in Canada is to attract capital from other jurisdictions to invest in the resources of our country and the development of our country. And so I think this will be a very topical discussion for so many on the line today. It really takes a huge community to attract that capital. It's organizations like Toronto Finance International, but we work with so many of our counterparts domestically. We're working with government, we're working with the private sector, we're working with our stock exchanges, with our economic development partners in our country, and then fostering different partnerships around the world to attract that capital. So we're going to have a great discussion today about that. Certainly, you know, we'll also talk about the importance for emerging economies at attracting foreign direct investment to their economies. I think in Toronto, probably the best example of that would be our stock exchange actually has a large number of international listings, and we really work to attract those listings. It's a way for those countries to access capital within our market and then across to the US. So it creates an enormous opportunity for countries to go out of their own jurisdiction, list on another exchange, and access a broader array of capital. So I'm sure we're going to get into all of these topics. I think that the other thing that I would touch upon before I turn it back to Jochen is one thing we certainly can't ignore right now is the importance of ESG, of the different sort of environment, social, governance issues that we all need to think about when we're raising capital, because investors are looking to make sure that their dollars are going towards countries, to companies who care about these issues. And I think we certainly all realize in the World Association of International Financial Centers that this is a top priority for countries, for investors, and we all need to be thinking about this. And so if you're attracting or trying to attract foreign capital, you're certainly going to need to be thinking about how you're treating those issues, how you're reacting to those issues. And so we talk a lot about that amongst our partners. It certainly is of high importance within Canada right now, our focus on that, and really around the world. And as we emerge from the pandemic, I think clearly we've faced a global crisis with the pandemic, and hopefully we're moving through that now. But I think, you know, climate is our next crisis that we'll all face together. So we've learned to work together through this pandemic. I think hopefully it's taught us how to work together through dealing with the climate crisis that we no doubt will face. And so I think that these types of discussions are very important. I think the World Association of International Financial Centers will continue to foster these very important discussions in our financial centers and together with our other partners. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jochen to lead us through the discussion today. But thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Many thanks, Jennifer, for this well-placed introduction to our topic. I'm especially delighted to have diversity in terms of the continents, in terms of geography, looking at our esteemed panelists. Jennifer, you represent North America, but we also have representatives from Europe, from Asia, from the GCC, and from Africa, which makes me very happy. Let me introduce the panelists in alphabetic order. First, there's Miles Celic. Miles is the CEO of the City UK, which comprises the British financial industry. Then we have Hassan. Ali Hassan. Ali is a senior representative Europe and North America of Dubai International Financial Center. Furthermore, locally from Nur Sultan, James Martin, the Chief Investment Officer of Astana International Financial Center. And last but definitely not least, Ntoudi Mouyelo. He is the Chief Investment Officer of Rwanda Finance. Let me start maybe with you, Ntoudi. For Rwanda's future development path, of course, it's crucial to attract sufficient international capital. So maybe can you elaborate a little bit on what is the role of Rwanda Finance in that respect? And what are your experiences in talking to international investors? And in particular, what do they expect from Rwanda?
Thank you very much, Jochen, for this question. And it is a pleasure to be here on this panel with the other colleagues from International Financial Centers. So first of all, again, my name is Ntoudi Mouyelo. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Rwanda Finance Limited. Rwanda Finance Limited is an agency in charge of promoting and developing what is called Kigali International Financial Center in Rwanda. So to your question, if you allow me, I will not actually directly answer to it on what is the need for Rwanda for its future development path, but more look at the Africa continent. As you have rightly said, here we have representatives from different continents, and we, Rwanda Finance, we only represent this, I would say, growing continent being Africa, where there is clearly a gap in terms of financial centers, and I will say Pan-African and international financial centers. So for the development of the continent, I want to give maybe just one number for people to realize what we are talking about. Today, the African Development Bank expects to see a need in terms of private equity financing around 100 billion per year on the continent. And we have to remember that Africa was experiencing a growth between 4 to 6% before COVID, Rwanda being above 8 to 10%. So the need of funding is crucial, not only for Rwanda, but for the continent. And it is for us a key to be able to attract those new investment coming from the international market. With the current saving that we have on the continent, we cannot maintain the growth of our economies. And our role in Rwanda for the region and for the continent is really to develop this innovative, attractive, and competitive ecosystem that will make it easy for investment coming into the continent to find a home, a place to actually expand throughout the continent. So on that respect, what we are doing in Rwanda is first to look at the legal and regulatory framework that we are providing to investors. We want to make sure that when someone is looking for a compliant place to do business, there is the right fit, I will say, with what Rwanda can offer. Same-wise, when we look at an investor who is looking for connectivity within Africa, because remember, Africa being the continent with the most number of countries, here we're talking about 54 countries, it is important to find a place where you can easily connect through DTAs, through airlines, through all type of partnership with all the countries around. And Rwanda wants to play that role. And the third one is, of course, on the level of ease of operation. How is it easy for someone to actually route its investment in Africa through Rwanda? So clearly our role here is to make this journey into the continent as easy as possible. And what we have experienced with the different international investors is, first of all, the need to work on this perception that Africa is sometimes a place difficult to maneuver in. Once this perception has been addressed, we see a lot of interest for people to invest more into the continent. And we are happy in Rwanda to see the first investors choosing Kigali International Financial Center for their cross-border investment on the continent. So clearly what they're expecting from us is to be their partner in the long term, to be a place where they can have access to expertise, to African expertise, a place where they can have access to projects also from the continent, because we have this unique role in Rwanda to consolidate the different types of investment opportunities that someone will look for in Africa. You don't need to go in all the 54 countries to find them. In Rwanda, we are creating a kind of marketplace for strategic investment on the continent. So with our value proposition, again, being around compliance, being around connectivity with the rest of Africa, and ease of operation, working with other African financial centers, we really want to be this new alternative center for business and investment into the continent. So again, thank you, Jochen, for the question. And I hope it will create more interest from the audience to come to us. Thank you.
I have to congratulate you. You know, you have really an excellent start. Numbers are great, and in categories like ease of doing business, you're doing very well. That said, of course, maybe some best practice from other financial centers is also of interest for you. I'm sure you're also willing to learn from the experience of others. What has happened in Nur Sultan over the last years at Astana International Financial Center is probably of interest, but also what has happened in Dubai over the last 20 years. And in that sense, let me turn to Ali. Ali, Dubai, of course, has a long history of attracting international capital. We have seen lots of landmark projects in Dubai. And looking at DFC, when DFC was planned and then founded in 2002, the ambition was even to become more attractive by offering a financial free zone with a separate legal system. 20 years later now, DFC is among the leading financial centers worldwide, and also Dubai as an emirate is highly successful. So what have you done right, and what are the best practices you can share with others like Ntoudi?
Yes, certainly, Jochen. Thank you very much for the question. And hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I won't mention the football from the other night, Jochen, of course. But no, listen, I mean, just by way of background, I've been involved with the DIFC for 16 of its 17-year history. So actually it was live in 2004. That's when the laws were enacted, whereas the planning started in 2002. I was 8 years in Dubai with the regulator there, the financial regulator, the DFSA. And the last 8 years, I've been leading international coverage on the business development side, enabling firms to export their expertise, products and solutions to the MIASA, Middle East, Africa, South Asia region. So, you know, and before that, I was actually at the FSA, as was in the UK, and business development roles with people like Bloomberg. So 30 years experience in financial services. You know, I think, you know, Dubai has been very successful in aggregating capital and talent. And I'd like to focus on sort of three reasons or three themes that have enabled that. I mean, you know, firstly, the economic rationale or the market opportunity, right? So if you look at financial centers across the globe, you can see a mixture of global international hubs coupled with smaller domestic focused locations. You tend to find that financial centers arise as natural clusters of capital, expertise, and talent around economic activity. So you've got to have that economic activity, I think. So one of the key things that Dubai and DIFC has done really well and really successfully is position itself as a hub for the GCC in the first instance. And the GCC is a region that is diversifying rapidly. The hydrocarbon boom has certainly built up significant asset pools, which are attractive, but now the economies are diversifying, and that's generating, that economic activity. And secondly, Dubai lends itself easily to being a hub for that wider region, which gives access to growth markets, such as India, for example. So that's the first thing that I think you really need to have, a real economic imperative for a financial center to come about. Secondly, I think, government economic strategy is very important, right? So, the DIFC has been in operation now for almost 2 decades, but, Dubai's economic strategy, which really underpins the success of the center and its attractiveness, has been in place for 50 years. So this is not something that happens overnight. It takes time. So what did the UAE, what did Dubai do? So in the 70s, Jebel Ali Port was created, a deep water port that gave Dubai a crucial role in the trade flows from Asia into the Middle East, into Europe, Africa, and beyond. And now I think there's around $400 billion of global trade that passes through Dubai. I think 60% of Chinese exports, pass through Dubai. So hand in hand with trade goes finance, right? In the 80s, Emirates Airline was created. And, that provides that connectivity that business and the economy requires. And then in the 90s, you had, further diversification of the economy in various sectors, hospitality, tourism, construction, education, healthcare, all of those giving rise to inward investment opportunities, but at the same time, and probably more importantly, creating the hard and soft infrastructure to support businesses and to attract global talent to the city. So I think the long-term wider economic strategy of a country or a region or a city is fundamental to its success, and that's certainly what we've seen in the DIFC. Then lastly, I think that innovation and the power of international standards, I think Rwanda is very much, on the right lines in terms of its commitment, and I think that, if you are going to attract international regional market participants, the adoptions of international standards of law and regulation, is key. So we were the first, the DIFC was the first in the region to adopt a common law legal system and put in place a financial regulator, the DFSA, that operates to international norms. So what you're trying to do, is provide that familiar and certain environment for businesses so that they can easily and seamlessly bring business models and control frameworks from elsewhere and, immerse them into the local ecosystem. International linkages, and we're proud members of the World Alliance here as well. International linkages are very, very important to give credibility to those local regulations, for example. So the DFSA has over 100 MOUs with regulators around the world. And you also do that on the legal side as well to ensure that judgments that your jurisdiction makes are enforceable. That also reinforces the credibility of what you have. So we were actually a key innovation, and I think it's also critical that financial centers continue to innovate. So we're seeing a shift to the digital economy, and we are innovating. We have pushed forward on our future of finance strategy, which I can mention a little bit more later on. But we now already have a tech cluster that's 6 times as large as anything else in the GCC. And we see that as going to, as a main driver of growth going forward. So I think another essential element is to continually innovate to underline the success and continue your momentum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. To pick up your football theme you have started, thank you for kicking the ball to me in 2 different issues. Of course, fintech innovation. This is also at the heart of the World Alliance and all our 20 members. And also, of course, you have mentioned your cooperation from a regulatory point of view internationally. We have just published a new report on international regulatory cooperation. This is something also we highly support as financial centers. So yeah, thank you for these two balls you kicked to me. Let me move on to James and back to Nursultan. I've mentioned already Astana International Financial Center, a relatively new entity, officially launched in 2018. And as Ali corrected me regarding DAFC 2004, 2002. But of course, we all know it takes years of preparations, convincing public politicians, the leaders in the country, and putting together everything, and then formally having a start. And I remember also long discussions in Nursultan before 2018, before it started officially and was opened by the first president of the Kazakh Republic. James, a lot has happened since 2018. Let me directly ask you, what is the feedback you receive from international investors, and what is needed from a Kazakhstan point of view to attract additional capital?
Thank you very much, Jochen. And let me, as host from the Astana Finance Days, thank you all for joining and for moderating the panel, Jochen. I mean, you've all been such good friends and allies to us here in the Astana International Financial Center. I mean, from us, I've worked with you, obviously, Jochen, and some of our colleagues in the Financial Center through our sort of lives through the capital markets and the initial core foundations that apply to some of these financial centers. And what I would say was, yes, we established ourselves under constitutional law in 2015. So for us, it was around 2.5 years. But we did have, it was an innovation and an inspiration from our founding father, Nursultan Nazarbayev. And that was based around the fact that we needed, much to Ali's point, we needed to implement these international standards that people can take their business models and familiarities from their home markets into a new market and feel as comfortable as possible. So for us, it's very much about these fundamentals. I like to call it a de-risking platform. And when we talk about AIFC as a de-risking platform, it's because we're blessed not only in Kazakhstan, but the wider region of having underlying assets, be they physical, geographical, or human capital. And it's people want to see how they can avail of these, but in a de-risking environment. So for us, very much to Ali's point, it was the foundation, for instance, of the legal de-risking, the court, the arbitration center, and they are set up similar but not the same as DIFC, but they are set up in the UK, the English and Welsh law principles, absolutely. But it's also innovating and modifying on top of that. And that is always to ensure, through the innovation and electronic age, that we are keeping up as much as possible in what the investors need. And that is stability, transparency, finality with regards to financial payments, etc. So we're only quite a nascent market, I should say 2018, but we've already had 500 plus cases in the arbitration center. And the key point again mentioned is the fact that these must be enforceable, not only within the state and the Republic of Kazakhstan, but also internationally. And that's the sort of key differentiator that we have, obviously with only British QC recognized judges there as well. So that's one aspect. The next aspect of de-risking, which I think is key for the financial center, is to our colleague from Rwanda's point. They do not want to be going to every single country in the region. You want to come to a single point where we feel comfortable, where we have like-minded men, women mentality that's in place for us to understand. So for us, we've been working very much on the need for structured and articulated bankable projects. We must do the work, sometimes further than perhaps in some of the other developed markets, but we must establish projects that are real. Investors want to come here, their compliance allow them to come here and their shareholders because we have the law, but what are they going to play with? So it's about bankable projects. The next level of de-risking is then potential for co-investment. So it's financial de-risking by government skin in the game co-investments. Less so guarantees these days. People are looking for commitment. It may not be for financial reasons, but for, again, comfort reasons. And that's very much the case where we have government equity and debt, different sort of shapes and models to the Kazakhstan through our sovereign wealth fund structures. And then I would say it's also about the overall setting, not only of the regulator to international standards, but that people feel familiar with the business practices, so they can see like-minded people who are trying to be innovative and also to think. So, I mean, I think it's, in summary, it's very much about that effect of some cluster effect that, to Jennifer's opening remarks, it's also about how we can bring the captains of industry, the sell side, the buy side together, and the government in order to have a one single point of meeting that we as the financial center can provide access to a different range of services.
Thank you very much. Miles, let me turn to you. For an economy as massive as a United Kingdom, of course, attracting international capital, from my point of view, seems to be a complex issue involving many players, maybe it's the City of London, Department for International Trade, or even Downing Street number 10, I guess. So what is the role the City UK plays in that, combination of the different actors, and what influence do you have on attracting international capital as an industry-led body?
Well, thanks very much, Jochen, and just want to say delighted to be able to be here to join the event and to be part of such a terrific panel. So the role of City UK is to be the representative body for UK-based financial and related professional services. So, as I think all of the previous speakers have identified, there's an ecosystem here that's really important. And I'll come back to that. And I thought it was also interesting, I think both Ali and James talked about the importance of common law. And I think sometimes that legal underpinning is forgotten as part of attracting investment. But the way that City UK does that is that we work with government, we work with regulators, we work across the industry to ensure that the UK can compete as effectively as possible for capital. And that's through having competitive policy systems, competitive regulatory systems, and also high standard regulatory systems. I think there is a misunderstanding in some parts of the media or politics, for instance, that seems to think that low standards attract business. Actually, high standards attract business and high standards keep business, and that allows you the momentum to continue to grow and to build. And that's particularly important because capital is enormously mobile. International capital can go anywhere in the world. And so for me, the other element of this is to, in order to attract that kind of investment, a major international financial center has to have a strong and a welcoming business environment, but it also needs to be an attractive place to live, to work. The reason that you look at New York or London as two of the world's leading full-service international financial centers is that apart from the fact that you have the full spectrum of financial and related professional services present in strength there. And historically, that's been things like banking, asset management, insurance, the market infrastructure, but also the professional services side. So accountancy, management consultancy, legal services, as we've already touched upon. But as you look to the future of international financial centres and the ability to draw capital, there's livability, there's quality of life. You need to be able to attract people to come and work somewhere, to be based there. There's ensuring that you've got the right visa systems in place, fly in, fly out rules in place. And also, as I talk about the quality of life, that's related not just to theatres, schools, universities, museums, galleries, and so on. It's also around the right transportation, both within a city, but also the international connectivity that you'd be looking for with the rest of the world, that allows people to fly in and do business meetings and also fly out with ease to other centres where they would want to do business. So what our members do is they are part of that ecosystem. They're a vital part of that ecosystem. They ensure that they can provide the best quality services, the best quality advice, the best quality services to clients and customers, both in the UK and around the world. And so the complexity that you alluded to in your question is one of success. So it is inevitable that when you have an insurance sector the size of the one in the UK, which is the fourth largest insurance market in the world, successful banking, highly successful asset management, very successful legal systems, etc. Each of those bodies, because they achieve a critical mass in and of their own right, will have their own representative bodies. They'll have well-functioning advocacy and compliance and regulatory policy teams within their own companies. But there is a need to bring all of that together under one roof. And when we were set up just over a decade ago by two people, at the request of two people, Alistair Darling, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time in the Labour government of Gordon Brown, and Boris Johnson, who was the Mayor of London at the time and has obviously gone on to bigger and better things since then. The challenge to industry from government was, we want somewhere where all of this comes together, that can speak for all of this. And in drawing that together, it helps the industry to work with the regulators and work with government in offering global investors exactly the sort of thing that they're looking for in all of those functions being located in London and in the UK, so that when they want to invest in the UK, when they want to invest in a business, there is a pre-existing structure that they can plug into really easily, really quickly. It makes the whole process much less difficult, much less painful, and that allows us to be able to bring to bear all the different parts of the private sector part of the ecosystem to support the state part of the ecosystem, and indeed vice versa, to encourage capital to come to a centre like the UK.
Many thanks, Miles. This for me sounds like good news for, emerging and aspiring players like Rwanda. You need to work hard, build up the right framework, and then, it becomes pull instead of push, right? So the international investors will come, and then you just have to serve them well, right? So, but of course, this right ingredients need to be in place first. And this, of course, we have seen in the case of Dubai takes time. James, let me come back to you. You closely cooperate with several Chinese entities in part of your business at Astana International Financial Center, for instance, for the exchange, AIX. And furthermore, Kazakhstan and Astana International Financial Centers are also well positioned along the Belt and Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So a vast investment program. I guess this is a huge advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we are blessed sort of geographically, and I think what we've realized, obviously, with the positioning and the size that we have in Kazakhstan, I mean, the opportunity that we have has been highlighted, I would say, especially in some sectors, given what has happened with COVID. Obviously, with COVID, people have been realizing that they need to have near to mid-shore logistics plans, for instance. And so it's not only with China that we have this highlighted, where we have, for instance, the largest dry port in the world, Khorgos, is on the borders between China, but it's also, remember, that we have the longest contiguous border in the world between two countries, which is between obviously ourselves and Russia to the north. So it's not only that, it's the positioning. Yes, we have the Silk Road, the Belt and Road, but we also have the northern corridor from China across through Russia. We have the central corridor where we have built over 2,300 kilometers of railways to connect with China. And then I would say also, especially with regards to agriculture. So as with our friends in the Middle East, we are diversifying away from a fossil and extraction-based GDP. That will take time. However, agriculture, I think, with regards to China, Russia, is very, very key for us, given that we are focusing so much together with the World Bank, with ADB and the like, on improving and benefiting from the agricultural sector. So we have China as a large importer of food, absolutely. When it comes to financial, then, it's not only physical infrastructure, it's physical and digital infrastructure. So you hear people obviously talking about the digital Silk Road, or we're talking about a renewable energy network, very much to Jennifer's opening remarks about trying to greenwash our proper investments. So there are those opportunities there. And we have been designated by Beijing as being the R&B center on the Belt and Road. So it's very much about e-commerce as well, trying to create that sort of middle landing ground, if you will, between the different types of markets, given the sensitivities and the geopolitical play that we have. But it's definitely much an opportunity, but not just towards China, but also our other neighboring regions, including Europe and the Middle East.
James, if I may, we have a question from our audience. Do you partner with other international financial centers or countries to attract and deploy international capital?
I mean, very, very much so. I mean, we focus as not only with yourselves and our World Alliance of International Financial Centers. We work very, very closely with Miles and the City UK, for instance, leveraging off their experience, seeing how we can, for instance, improve our corporate governance, improve the international standards of doing business. And then it's very much, for instance, we work with the likes of Toronto and other markets with regards to mining, where we have similar overlaps as well. I mean, we are doing very, very closely. We signed, for instance, an MOU in St. Petersburg Forum recently, which I'm sure you're aware was a very active forum. We signed there with the Moscow Financial Center an MOU with specific areas of collaboration. And I think that is very much, areas, for instance, that we look to learn from each other, because although we may have nascent markets, we have new members such as Rwanda, we can still learn from them because they're very much thinking differently. We have the benefits of the older members and benefits from the younger members. So it's very much about collaboration as well. Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Ntoudi, Rwanda, James has just mentioned Rwanda. So let me ask, Chinese investment, is that also a factor in Rwanda? And do you try to accommodate this at Rwanda Finance or with other entities in Kigali?
Thank you very much, Jochen, for the question. And again, it is always inspiring to be surrounded by other financial centers like Dubai, UK, or in Kazakhstan, because as it was said, we are all learning from each other. So in the case of China, maybe before being specific to Chinese investors, I believe that all the panelists will agree with me that as International Financial Center, we want to address the needs of all investors, coming from China, coming from Europe, coming from North America, and really do our best to accommodate them. Now, in the specific case of China, as you know, I just mentioned that the needs of infrastructure investment on the continent is huge. We are talking about billions on a yearly basis. And we all know that Chinese investors are key in the development of infrastructure on the African continent. So yes, they are very important to us. Looking at, for example, the number of tax treaties that we have on the continent. Today, I think they have around 14 to 15 tax treaties on the continent. And the role that we want to play there, and I will take some of the words coming from James, is to be the de-risking platform of Chinese investors on the continent, by actually offering them the connectivity with our network of double tax treaties that we have with other African countries. So we are looking at that. We are looking at where those FDIs are going from China to other African countries. And in our strategy to develop our DTA network, we take a priority on those big markets. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect, of course, is to also understand, and this one was already discussed before, that Chinese investors also have some preferences in terms of type of investment that are looking at, being in the range, being in the field of commodities, in the field of infrastructure, in the field of certain strategic projects. And again, here, what we want to make sure is for them to find the right project directly in Rwanda. But I would like to go a little bit into the financial space, because when you look at financial institutions from China, today they are quite active in certain countries, in Europe and in Asia, but you will see very few Chinese banks operating on the continent. And here it is really something that we would like to open, I will say, the debate is how to make it easier for their financial institutions to also operate in region or countries where they are doing business, because it is always important to be closer to your market. So here, the effort that we are putting in place is also on the clarity, transparency of our policies for those Chinese banks to be able to easily assess the attractiveness of Rwanda in terms of domicile for their financial institutions. So yes, we have made, and I'm happy that the comment came from Mike. If you look at the policy reforms, Rwanda is one of the few countries on the continent where you can speak French, English, Rwanda, Swahili. You can hear from my accent that I speak French mostly. But all the policy reforms that we have made are based on common law. And we want investors that are coming here to be familiar with the different clauses or provision that we put. And for that, we have looked at other centers, starting with Dubai, looking at UK, looking at other ones that have been more mature in this journey of providing financial services. So to go back to your question, yes, Chinese investors are very key to us, and being Rwanda Finance, being Rwanda Development Board, being the Private Sector Federation, different institutions in the country are doing their best to find the right approach to present Rwanda as a competitive and attractive place to do business. But again, this is an easier journey when we are able to collaborate with other centers. So those that today, for example, are the regional hub for RMB investment are also in our target list, if I may say, in order to capture part of those investments that may also want to come into the continent. I hope I've not been too long in my answer, but basically, yes, we want to create the proximity between Chinese investors and African opportunity, so they can find the right platform and for us in Africa to be able to monetize those opportunities through Kigali. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was definitely not too long, but we are curious to learn more what's happening in Kigali. Ali, we have heard already from James and their relationship with Rwanda. How is DFC doing? Do you work closely with Rwanda, with other financial centers in Africa? And do you have any advice for Ntoudi? Should they also set up a free zone like you did before?
Yeah, thanks, Jochen. Yeah, great question. I mean, we are, as you've heard from James and Mars as well. I mean, we very much look to work and collaborate with other centers. So we regularly have delegations from various African countries come and visit. Obviously, the IFC in Dubai, is a successful execution of a concept, and so people are very interested to learn how it's been done, and we're very open in terms of sharing our experiences at the same time, as well as having the formal MOUs and all the rest of it, but real practical engagement. We're very happy to participate in that, and really from our side, I think that actually 16 years at the DIFC, I've never really thought explicitly about how do I attract investors. What the approach has been, how do we attract and educate the market participants, and that's all the stakeholders that Miles mentioned. So it's, the lawyers, the accountants, the financial institutions, the financial firms, and because in a way they're key conduits for FDI, for foreign direct investment, because not only are they FDI in of themselves, so if you have a financial institutions, they set up an office, they bring people, blah blah blah, but they then have a self-interest in engaging investment opportunities to their underlying clients who happen to be investors, right? So that's the power of the financial center, the cluster. So in terms of your objectives, think about the market participants, and they will bring the investors to a degree. The other aspect is we're all new concepts, we're all new ideas, and it's not quite Malcolm X's quote about I didn't land on Plymouth Rock, but Plymouth Rock landed on me or us. We sort of arrive within an existing ecosystem. So there's quite a lot of work to do in terms of weaving in the new model with what is already there to bring consistency, and also to a degree overcoming existing interests, and to educate and inform and make aware that actually by doing this you'll grow the pie for everyone involved. So that there is a bit of legwork to do, and it's again gradual and incremental. It doesn't happen overnight. So getting for example the different regulators on the same page does take some time, but stick with it, and I'm sure you'll be successful.
Thank you very much. And I heard a little bit there's a closer partnership between Dubai and Kigali in the making, which would be great. Miles, of course, financial center like London or the Hall UK, it's not only providing capital for the UK, but I think you can also help emerging financial centers to attract more capital. So any thoughts on this?
Sure, and I think one of the great things that's come out from this panel is a recognition, and I think a really powerful message, that this isn't a zero-sum game. If one international financial centre does well, it doesn't mean another one does poorly. Actually, it tends to mean that we all do better. It's a rising tide that lifts all boats, and for that reason, City UK has always seen itself as a natural partner. We can help emerging international financial centres to understand the policies, the trends, the experience that we've gone through, that others have gone through, and I think the World Alliance is a great example of this in the way that there's a terrific sharing of information and best practice, and people can learn from each other's successes and each other's mistakes, and we see ourselves as part of that process. So we work very closely with governmental authorities, with regulators here in the UK and abroad, particularly as new innovative areas are emerging, such as ESG, sustainability, fintech, which is a huge UK advantage, and we in the industry have done our bit to facilitate that sort of inward investment into the UK, but also overseas. And James very kindly talked about the important partnership that we've had with AIFC down the years, obviously kindly hosting this event, and we've helped them with attracting inward investment and helping our members secure international investment opportunities. So there's an appetite that exists amongst companies, there's an appetite that exists amongst governments, and we see ourselves as natural partners to bring people together, working alongside many of the people on this call, working alongside the World Alliance for something that ultimately benefits citizens and benefits customers.
Thanks a lot, Miles. We only have 30 seconds left, but James, you wanted to comment on Ali. Maybe your closing words.
No. What I'm saying is thank you, Jochen. I mean, what I'd like to say is it's obviously that the panel has interestingly shown that there's different levels of maturity. Very much in Dubai, there are the special economic zones pre-established. So what we have to do in other more emerging regions, such as ourselves in Kigali, is what I'd like to say is we're not just a center for financial services. We are a center for raising finance. And that's very much a key message. So if in Rwanda or in Nur Sultan or even in Casablanca, you have to be able to show that you can raise money and capital and help the traditional sectors of perhaps industrials or fintech and or the traditional agriculture or something and tourism. So I think that's very much key for the financial centers to realize it's not just around the professional services. Ali, we would all like to get there, but fortunately you're reaping the benefits. We look forward to joining you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, let me close by thanking all of you, also Jennifer for her introduction, for all your insights. There's a lot to talk more on this topic, but I think our time is over. So many thanks, and yeah, back to the conference.
Thank you.